get to some callers here tonight who are waiting on the line.
Yes.
Again, we still have some open lines if you want, guys
Dan
want to
and I
call
could sit and
in.
talk this whole fucking
It's
show.
true. We totally could. You
We
ready to
totally-
get to some folks here? All right, let's do it. Let's go to Matt in Maryland. You are first tonight. Hey, Matt, how's it going? Hello, Matt. Can you hear us? You are on the air.
Hey, yeah. Hey, Dan. Sorry, I had you on mute.
That's okay. How's it going, Matt?
Hey, Matt.
Going good, dude. Great to talk to you again.
Abs-
And sorry, who's the co-host again?
This is Jen Aldrich from several ACA productions, notably Godless Bitches.
Oh, Godless Bitches.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody knows who I am. That's awesome.
Jen Aldrich. Great to talk to you as well.
You.
So, Matt, what did you want to talk to us about tonight?
So my topic was the validity of the left-right spectrum.
Okay.
Like the political spectrum.
Political spectrum. All right. Okay. Tell me more about that.
Well, so my opinion on it is kind of that it seems like these are just labels that are kind of, applied post hoc to ideas. I don't know. I just feel like, I feel like it's not really super valid. I feel like they're just labels that get applied to ideas that happen to coexist, or not coexist, but exist in, sort of quote, quote, conservative or liberal, groups.
Well, I think, it's interesting. I think it can be useful, and at the same time, I think you're right. I think there are some problems with it that are kind of arbitrary. As someone who identifies as kind of more left leaning, right? My beliefs. If you were to call me a liberal, right, then my kind of political ideas are going to be clustered in kind of a similar category. I'm probably going to feel the same way about abortion as I am about gay marriage, as another liberal is going to, right? Like usually they're going to feel the same way about some stuff, and you could say the same thing for some people on the right. Now, of course, it is arbitrary in the sense that what people who would self-describe themselves as the right or left are talking about today in 2020 was not the case, like 50 years ago or even before that. And even then we had, there used to be a time where we had completely different political parties in this country that had totally different issues on the mind. So yeah, it is a changing thing. And we can kind of get stuck in sticking to the labels without realizing that, hey, we're more than just labels as people, right? We're actually more complicated, and somebody on the right could have a very left-leaning view about one thing, and of course it's uncommon, but it's not. Well, it's even not uncommon, honestly. I think if you actually sat down and talked with most people in this country, they probably have a mix of a lot of different ideas. I agree. It's not as cut and dry as a lot of people think it is. But what do you think about this, Jen?
I think it's human nature to kind of group into left, right, or whatever. Yes, we're going to have people that have similar views, but it's human nature to kind of want to be a part of a tribe.
Yeah.
So you're going to go to people who you have more similar things with, just on the basis of kind of survival. You stick to what's familiar with you, and this way you kind of know what you can trust. Yes, the labels are applied. And like Dan said, everyone falls in between somewhere. Some people are ridiculously crazy left, some people are ridiculously crazy right, but the majority of us fall in the middle somewhere. They are arbitrary, but it's more of a human condition to label left or right, more so than this is how we're going to stack the deck against politics. I do think that it may have been used to their advantage. Well, the left versus the right, but I think it was ultimately human nature and human condition to group ourselves into one or the other.
Well, it's definitely a political strategy. It's definitely it is a tribal thing, right? It's you don't want to talk about that or think that. That's what the left thinks about these kinds of issues, or that's what the right thinks. You hear people say these kinds of things, and there's a connotation when people say that. It's saying, oh, well, if the right thinks that, or if the left thinks that, then that's wrong. Especially if you use certain there's shall we say unkind words that are used instead of that to kind of refer to those groups of people as well. So it is kind of an in-group, out-group kind of strategy as well. So
it's used. Yeah, the human condition is used to pit us against each other.
Yeah,
it comes down to political maneuvers. Of course it is, but and I hate to say it, but that's part of the political game. You got to figure out who your audience is too, and especially recently, what a better way to get people talking than to incite them.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point because it's like, well, if I am a Democratic candidate for president or something, and I want to be able to, make sure that people who are more interested in what I have to say are interested, I'm going to target those people in some way. I'm going to figure out, okay, what do people who believe like this tend to do, or what forms of communication do they tend to listen to most, and I might strategize my messaging towards those mediums. That's definitely an element to it too.
Right.
Yeah, I think maybe kind of a better way to put. I mean, I agree with a lot of what you guys just said, but maybe a better phrasing of what I was trying to get at was I feel like we all kind of want, better health care, better education, everyone to do well basically in society, but people have different views on how we get there,
Yes.
I think.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like the question for me is what actually makes something left or right fundamentally, or is it just, are we applying these labels kind of after the fact once they're claimed by one, quote, quote, group or another? I don't know. I just been kind of thinking about that.
It's pretty much how can I explain this? What the major political players in the party at the time are going for is kind of what leans it. Back in the day, our left and right leanings were actually reversed, where Republicans were more left and the Democrats were more right wing.
What we would call today left and right, right?
Right, what we would call
so it's not
today left and
confusing.
right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Usually it starts
Right.
with one party member who kind of gets a fire going to a more liberal and more conservative stance, and then the party itself will start changing over. And we've seen this happen a few times in American history where parties have kind of adjusted their left-right stance.
Yes. Like
It
people
comes
always,
it comes down to party members.
yeah,
And
people make, they like to say, oh, well, the KKK was founded by Democrats. It's like, yeah, but like the Democrats at that
the
time
Republicans wanted to end slavery.
it's like
Right.
totally
Yeah.
different things going on there, right? And another great example is abortion. A lot of people don't realize this, but people really didn't care about abortion as much as they do today than they did, 60, 70 years ago at this point, right? Especially on the right. It wasn't as big of a thing. People did not.
No.
It wasn't as politicized as it was today. But after like Roe v. Wade and stuff, like you definitely started to see more trends of that, especially, and of course, in evangelical communities when that was, kind of a big thing for them. But it really wasn't as big of a thing as people make it today. So there's definitely changes, right? It is kind of a label after the fact, and like as a younger generation grows up and they kind of mold themselves into different categories and they figure out what kind of they align with, they might bring some new ideas to the table that will change whatever party they already affiliate with,
We are actually covering the history of abortion and laws on the next episode of GB3 next month.
Cool.
So you guys can get a bit more in depth of that. And we do cover how many Republicans back in the 70s, I would say, were pro-choice, and they were completely pro-choice.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
then we got this evangelical
right?
backing money.
Yeah.
Not so much anti-government, but more of bodily autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
And once they started getting this evangelical backing, was Ronald Reagan, George Bush Sr., both flip stances. They were both pro-choice. In fact, Ronald Reagan was one of the first people to enact much less strict abortion laws in the country for California, and then flipped his stance. So money talks.
Yeah, it's true.
Exactly.
That's part of it too.
I think he was also actually a little bit for gun control too in the beginning there with them. Black Panther showed up at some office brandishing weapons or something like that.
Yeah.
I believe there was a legacy of him where he pulled back on his gun control stance, and then somebody tried to kill him, and it was kind of like a laughing stock, like, oh, so what do you think about those gun control laws now?
I think our current president was also a bit more pro-choice before he was in office as
Okay,
well.
so
I think there's some evidence of that too.
He was. I'm from New York City. I grew up in a Trump-dominated era for 20 some odd years. He was such a Democrat. He was so pro-choice, and he was anti-union, but
Yeah.
not all of us can be completely on the left. And he got all of a sudden he got Mike Pence behind him. He got the evangelical, and his it changed. And
Yeah.
I am full for people changing their stances. I've had many views of my own that I've changed
Hmm.
to another stance. It's the party members. It's, political parties will kind of flip back and forth.
Yep.
Republican Party has now gotten way conservative to where the Democratic Party is way liberal, and the
Hmm.
libertarians kind of are often doing their own thing right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So these labels are kind of a little arbitrary in some sense, like they don't mean the same thing in all points in time, right? So that they're going to mean different things. They're going to describe different political ideologies depending on what year you're talking about, liberals versus Republicans, right? So yeah.
Right. And you
Yeah.
have to remember too, at one point in time, liberal meant you supported supported desegregating schools. That was liberal.
Yeah.
That was
Mhm.
considered liberal, where now it's not even a thought. Now liberal is supporting
was-
trans rights.
There was also the sense of classical liberalism, which is like talking about
Mm.
property rights and stuff like that. We can go into this all day, but
That's
yeah,
basically
Fiscal and-
libertarianism,
yeah.
I think, right?
yeah. So to your point, though, Matt, there is, there's something funny about the words we use about these things, and they are politicized. So yeah,
I think the little bit of Googling I've done on this topic, the most sort of, pinned down ideas that I can sort of correlate left versus right with is liberal and conservative, and their very traditional meanings, which is like liberal, you're kind of more open to change, versus conservative, you're a little bit less, you kind of want like
yeah,
It also depends on where in the world you are.
Yeah.
A lot of places in the world, liberals are actually considered way more conservative.
yeah. It's
yeah.
in this country, though. I think to your point, Matt, though, it is. I think a good descriptor would be, right leaning means you're more sticking to the status quo. Left is generally for more progressive stances. I think most people would agree with kind of that distinction there. But there's always going to be people that have different points of view.
And that's actually kind of what I was about to get at too, Jen, was that it seems like today liberal and conservative don't even really mean those definitions that I just outlined. Like to me, there's like I identify as a progressive, which I sort of think is different than a liberal, or maybe someone might call a neoliberal or something like that. Like it seems like these things are always kind of in flux, and it's kind of similar to like philosophical ideas. They take on new meanings as, different groups, kind of claim that and tweak it a little bit or whatever.
It definitely goes more with the social kind of status quo of what's being set and what the issues are at the time.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
That's,
I would agree.
and that speaks to the age that we live in now too, Matt. I think because we have the internet, because we have such a rich access to resources and such a wealth of information, people can find these other kind of ideas and figure out what their identities are and kind of construct their identities based on what they find, right? So like I think we're probably seeing that more. Obviously that's always been a thing, right? But now I can sit here in Texas and listen to somebody from, I don't know, New York say something really cool, and I can vibe with that, and like that's because that's the result of globalization and stuff. We're getting all these different things surging, and that'll probably develop into our politics someday. I don't know. Like we're just now having like an independent party candidate really be taken seriously. And like all these other things that are kind of happening, because that hasn't been a thing for a long time.
Also remember too that with this flood of information, we're now coming into the age of what I call hype media, because your story has to grab attention somehow. So I tend to keep that in mind a lot when I do see something, especially inciting or there's something that'll piss me off, and I have to take a double look and say, is this hype media?
Yeah, don't get all of your political information from memes, folks. Vet your memes.
But there's also what I call outrage flooding.
Yeah,
there's outrage flooding, which I've seen geared more towards the liberal left group, to where conservatives will kind of dream up this ridiculous hype thing that conservatives are arguing about. It's like, no, we're not arguing about this. Like, this isn't an issue. Why?
Yeah, there's definitely false narratives and stuff that go around with this. But anyway, I do want to kind of wrap up this call here in just a sec. But Matt, thanks again for calling in to talk about this, because it is interesting the kind of labels you use about this stuff. It's not something I wish people kind of explored that more. I think there's a lot of people in this country who really just grow up and say, "Oh, I'm a conservative" or "I'm a liberal," and they just don't. They don't even really know what that means. They kind of just, everybody in their group just kind of identify with that, so they just kind of took it on too. So it's good to kind of examine.
Politics is a lot like religion, to where it's, your parents were this way, and then they taught you this way, and
yeah, I'd rather somebody believe and say what they are because they've looked into the issues themselves and they figured that out, rather than just say, "Oh, because I know this person and I just like them and I want to be like them." I don't know, like you know how people can kind of get these identities. But again,
exactly. Perhaps another interesting conversation for another time is
absolutely.
sort of how religion influences politics and things like that. But you guys, I'm going to get some of that merch, Dan. I don't know if you remember when I emailed about I need a Truth Wanted mug.
That's brother. Right. The mug's on there, brother. Go and get it. Thanks again, Matt, for calling in.
Thank you, Matt, for calling.
Yeah, appreciate you, bud. And yeah, please, folks.
I could do whole episodes on those topics.
Look at that beautiful merchandise right there. I'm excited.
You have a hoodie. I'm jealous that you have a hoodie.
I'm going to rock that hoodie. It's going to be so
jealous.
Fresh. I hope it fits me. That's all I'm saying. I have a gigantic frame and I don't